Good morning. Good morning, good morning. So our minister, Reverend Dr. Alex Regal, is sick. He and I were doing this together. And so I do a lot of funerals outside. I don't do them here. I do services. So all the little things that would go awry and have, who would I go to but Fran Turner? So I invite Fran Turner in, and we're going to have a wonderful time, and we're going to laugh, and we're going to cry, and we're going to celebrate her. My name is Reverend Mary Tarbell Green. I'm the Assistant Minister for Pastoral Care here at First Unitarian Church of Cincinnati. I welcome all of you. I thank you for coming. On behalf of Dr. Alex Regal, on behalf of Reverend Sharon Dittmar, Fran's family, friends, and the church, thank you. I'm going to try, she has a tribe. She doesn't have a family, she has a tribe. So I'm going to try to mention everyone in her family. It's a wonderful, wonderful family that she has, and she, through the years, has made a family of us. So Fran's sister Anne, and her brother Sam and Diane, Barbara and Mark, her beloved grandchildren, Darren, where's Darren was on the ground with me yesterday, and so were you, and Lucas and Nikki and Kelsey and Suki and Hannah, her beloved great-grandchildren, Solon and Isla and Sophie and Addie and Jack, in memory of her oldest son, who we lost 4 years ago, Bob Beta, and wife Courtney. We take him into our heart. Her family of origin, Judge Tim Black and wife Marnie and their 2 daughters, nieces of Fran's, Abby and Emily, Uncle Bob, Bill, Luther, Stephen and Susan, Jackie, Chris, David and Sue Black, Dorothy, Jim, Edie, and her cousin Fran, who's in the back somewhere. The agencies we welcome so close to her: Prospect House, First Step Home, and Eden House, and her dear family and First Church family, 12-Step family, Furnace Mountain Meditation family. We welcome you all. And we have Lynn, who's going to come up and gratefully light the chalice. We need one another when we would mourn and be comforted. We need one another when we are in trouble and we crave help, or when we're in the deep water of temptation and a strong hand might pull us out. We need one another when we would accomplish some great purpose and we know that we simply cannot do it alone. We need one another in our defeats, when encouragement, and with encouragement, we might strive again. And in the hour of our success, when someone might share our bliss. And we need one another when we come to die, and would have gentle hands help prepare us for that journey. All of our lives, we are in need, you of me, me of you, us of one another. We best live when we bring one another our understanding, our support, our love, and our care. As we look back over time, we find ourselves wondering, did we remember to thank you, Fran Turner, enough for all that you have done for us? For all the times that you were by our side to help and support us, celebrate our successes, understand our problems, accept our defeats, or for teaching us by your own example the value of hard work and good judgment, courage and integrity, perseverance and patience. We wonder if we ever thanked you enough for the sacrifices that you made to let us have the very best, or for the simple things, like your laughter, your wit, your sarcasm, smiles, and the times that we shared. If we have forgotten to show you our gratitude enough for all of the things that you did, please know that we're thanking you now, and we're hoping that you knew all along just how very much you meant to us. I just found out yesterday, it isn't enough that she did all of these things and that she played tennis ferociously and that she sailed, but she also was a big member of the Civic Garden Center, and I want to say that hello to them as well. And I'd like to introduce our Reverend Sharon Dittmar, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is the Reverend Sharon Dittmar. I am the Minister Emerita here, and it was my great honor and privilege to be Fran's minister for some time. I also got to know her as a friend, which is not typical for me. I would say Fran taught me how to meditate. I'd been doing it for years very poorly, and then Fran had a meditation session on Monday mornings. We'd meet in the back, and they were doing construction on Reading Road, and there would be this ka-thump over the plat, this big metal plat, and she looked at us and said, "That's meditation." And for months, ka-plump, ka-plump, and Fran taught us to meditate. I feel like Fran's death is the loss of a great, great human being. Your presence here today testifies to a life well lived, well connected. You honor her in your presence. Reverend Mary asked me to do a reading from Walt Whitman, Leaves of Grass, and I am told this is a reading she gave at the funeral for her husband. A child said, "What is the grass?" fetching it to me with full hands. How could I answer the child? I do not know what it is any more than he. I guess it must be the flag of my disposition, out of hopeful green stuff woven. Or I guess it is the handkerchief of the Lord, a scented gift and remembrancer designedly dropped, bearing the owner's name some way in the corners that we may see and remark and say, whose? Or I guess the grass is itself a child, the produced babe of the vegetation. Or I guess it is a uniform hieroglyphic, and it means sprouting alike in broad zones and narrow zones, growing among black folks as among white. Canuck, Tuckahoe, Congressman Cuff, I give them the same, I receive them the same. And now it seems to me the beautiful uncut hair of graves. Tenderly will I use you, curling grass. It may be you transpire from the breasts of young men. It may be, if I had known them, I would have loved them. It may be you are from old people, or from offspring taken soon out of their mothers' laps. And here, you are the mothers' laps. This grass, very dark, to be from the white heads of old mothers, darker than the colorless beards of old men, dark to come from under the faint red roofs of mouths. Oh, I perceive after all so many uttering tongues, and I perceive they do not come from the roofs of mouths for nothing. I wish I could translate the hints about the dead young men and women, and the hints about old men and mothers, and the offspring taken soon out of their laps. What do you think has become of the young and old men? And what do you think has become of the women and children? They are alive and well somewhere. The smallest sprout shows there is really no death. And if ever there was, it led forward life and does not wait at the end to arrest it and ceased the moment life appeared. All goes onward and outward. Nothing collapses. And to die is different from what anyone supposed, and luckier.
Fran's granddaughter, Nikki, has words of reflections and a beautiful a cappella Hebrew song, hymn.
My name is Nikki, and I am Fran's oldest granddaughter, although that doesn't really sound quite right. As he was teaching me, she was never Fran or Grandma Fran. She wasn't a grandmother at all. She was Faffy. And she's been Faffy for as long as I could speak. Unable to pronounce Fran, she became Faffy, stayed that way until the very end. Like Madonna or Cher, she only needed one name. And so much was held in that name. A love like no other, and recognition that she was oh so much more than a grandmother. From the beginning, she and I were a pair, as she reminded me just a couple months ago. Sleepovers at her house lasted throughout high school, as I always jumped at the opportunity to spend time with her. She introduced me to more things than I can count, from opera to Indian food to my first R-rated movie. It was Billy Elliot, not quite as scandalous as it sounds. She opened me up to new worlds and new ways of understanding. We shared book recommendations and a love of chamber music, and while I don't share her green thumb at the slightest, she taught me to see the intricacies of trees and flowers. And I remember, most of all, that I'd always leave feeling heard and seen when I was with her. She was the first to celebrate with me during the ups, while also being by my side during some of my darkest times. I recently found dozens and dozens of emails she saved between her and I from my time in Israel. Both before and after I was in a pretty bad car accident. She listened to my honestly endless whining about my recovery, cheering me on the whole time. She was able to make it feel like she was right next to me despite being oceans away. And her hug was the one I was waiting for when I got back to the States 6 months later. Faffy never saw herself as special, and on that she was oh so very wrong, or above anyone else. She had a black and white printout that lived next to her computer. Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a great battle, it said. Her decades of service to the recovery community impacted me greatly. An early memory has her and I typing up a grant on a typewriter as she helped get First Step Home up and running. I couldn't have been more than 5. These memories and understanding led to my own career in social work, and having her at my graduate school graduation was an incredibly special moment. And now the same sign lives in each office I work out of. There's a poem in a Jewish prayer book by Hannah Senish that so perfectly encapsulates Faffy and how I see my relationship with her now. There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people we have loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us. As we live our lives, these are the way we remember. She is the brightest light that shines in the darkest of nights. She has always been and will always be the one who guides me. Sorry. About 6 months ago, I was reading the book Hestia Strikes Him Back, and the last line read, "Grief is such a small price to pay for your friendship." And though my grief is immense, I would pay that price 100 times over for Faffy. I'm going to try to get through a song that Fafi requested in her last wishes. It's called Ailey Ailey, and the lyrics are by the same Hannah Senish. Ailey, Ailey, shelo yigamer le'olam, hacho v'chayam, rishru shel hamayim, baharach hashamayim, tefilat ha'adam. Haho v'chayam rish rush shel hamayim barach hashamayim tefilat hadam. Oh God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the water, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the water, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart. Thank you.
We have seats on either side if people would like to come sit. We could take a deep breath. It is hard to know where to start with our Fran Turner. That she was a member of First Church for many years, served on practically every committee, and she lived our covenant, helping to nurture spiritual growth and learning, being an activist for change, and in particular, our 8th principle, affirming spiritual wholeness by her actions and hope to help dismantle racism and other oppressions. Linnea Luce was a dear friend of Fran's and one of our dear members. And I wrote to her and I said, I'm on my 3rd eulogy. It's not good enough. It's never good enough for Fran, to capture Fran. And so she wrote back to me and said, quote, and in particular, we were at the gravesite yesterday and we were talking about the timing of this. Did Fran choose to have us do this after such a remarkable election? So I quote, whenever things were out of control at church, I would intentionally sit next to Fran Turner in congregational meetings. I could count on her to mutter 3 words or less, summarizing our confusion. What was sure to follow were another 3 or so muttered words that were clear-headed, certain, course-correcting, and calm, and patient. Firm, sometimes humorous, sometimes profane, sometimes impatient, yet always kind. It was advice that we needed to hold fast to. Fran didn't tolerate unkindness. She did not tolerate divisiveness, egos, bias, or anything less than what was good and healthy for all individuals and for the higher good. When she agreed to be on Right Relations, she modestly said that she didn't know what to do any more than the rest of us. I thought that was funny. Fran didn't know what to do any more than the rest of us. She was the rest of us. Yet for many of us, she was our pitch-perfect, bellwether, singing bull when we were so right on track to regaining harmony. Who counseled us gently but directly when we were off-key? Who smiled that $1 million smile at us whenever we were doing something that was truly not for the good of us and our collective whole? That was Fran. Fran Turner for 60 years in the Worldwide Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, where she served in the fellowship and agencies, supporting recovery, and serving on the board of the Prospect House, the men's residential treatment program. She helped found First Step Home, recovery program for women. I met her some 40 years ago at Bethesda, where she was on this side as a supervisor in the inpatient program. I was on the other side in the outpatient program, gaining my hours as a certification for alcohol and drug counselor. Fran treasured her meditation, belonging to the Furnace Mountain Zen Center, and she founded the Cincinnati Zen Center in 1994. I did not know. She held weekly meditation groups for years here at church, then on Zoom, and there are people now watching on YouTube, not just here in Cincinnati, but all over. Fran was a doer, and she hoped that her 12-step practice and Zen practice would sustain and nurture her into a beer. Fran was tall, stately, regal, cultured, imposing with an ever-ready smile to engage with you, or keen humor and witty sarcasm to help knock you off balance. She loved to challenge. Several years ago, I was to meet her for lunch, and I'm at home mopping the kitchen floor, which, by the way, I never do. I never mop the kitchen floor. And my phone rings, and it's Fran in a very calm voice sitting in a booth at Aladdin's asking me if we're still going to meet for lunch. Oh, I totally forgot. So I washed up and I rushed over and I sat down in the booth embarrassed, and she very quietly, with a little side smile, said calmly, "Have you forgiven yourself yet?" She was spot on. I was so berating myself. That was Fran, direct, laser, kind, and truthful. Fran was a formidable presence. Years of practice, perseverance, doggedness, kindness, inclusivity, grace, and a deep core belief that what she did mattered and what we do matter. Her integrity was strong and measurable, as evidenced by committees she served on or agencies she helped start, spiritual practices that she never neglected. Her fierce devotion to her family, her children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, made her heart full. She struggled when she began to have more recent health concerns because they robbed her of her industry and her agency. She was clearly here on earth to serve. And if she was slowing down, she, in her respectful way, raged at the gods, trying to find meaning and purpose in her decline. She continued to read books every day and the New York Times. And while you needed to be a brainiac to keep up with her, she never belittled. She always encouraged. In her last days, when things grew more confusing, she spoke an urgent cry to her children and said, quote, "I'm going to Virginia. I'm going to free the slaves. Freedom, autonomy, justice, fairness were at her core. She was a doer until her last breath in wanting to serve the people. I have sung Sweet Chariot at funerals, really maybe not knowing exactly what it meant until she urged her children to take her to Virginia, so I looked it up, and its meaning and significant. The chariot itself is a means of escape. It's slaves enslaved using that chariot to escape to the heavens. Maybe like the Underground Railroad, riding the chariot to freedom. It's a powerful song and a powerful message. I sang it yesterday. I'm going to sing a little today because it's a calling. It's a charge. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Well, I looked over Jordan, what did I see? Coming for to carry me home. A band of angels coming for me, coming for to carry me home. So I ask for each of you, what is your core wish, belief, action, or intention? What is your agency or service to your community, like Fran? Today you will hear about this extraordinary woman, as you did with Nikki, our beloved friend, my friend, Fran Turner. So I invite you to listen and to pause. Take a breath. Take something of Fran Turner with you today, and you be that justice. You be that wit. You be that humor. You be that vehicle of service. You advocate and amplify in her name, in her legacy, and make her memory a blessing. Her son, Sam.
Hello and good morning. I'm Sam Turner, my mom's second child. Thank you so much for coming. It's so wonderful to see so many of her friends and family here in this beautiful church that she loves so much, the First Unitarian Church of Cincinnati, and on such a beautiful day. Lord, for giving us such a wonderful weather today. My mom was born in 1931. She met our father in 1950 when she was just 19 years old, in between her freshman and sophomore year at Smith College. They fell in love. She dropped out of Smith in her sophomore year, and they were married in that little tiny white church in Indian Hill in the spring of 1951. By the time she was 28, she had 4 children and a husband who had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. When my dad passed away, my mom was 36 years old. She had 4 kids. Can you imagine 36 years old being a widow? It's kind of a no wonder she had to stop drinking and joined AA and stayed with that wonderful organization for 61 years. But the thing about my mom is that she was always strong, always disciplined, and she faced adversity head on. I think I can only remember about 3 or 4 times in my life that I actually ever saw her cry. And believe me, my siblings and I were kind of shocked that, wow, Mom could cry? I mean, she just never cried. She was just a very tough person. As I'm sure most of you know, she was a lifelong progressive liberal Democrat. When we lived in Palo Alto, we always had political signs out every election. They always had bumper stickers on their car. When we moved to Marymount in 1966, she kind of kept her political views off the front of the lawn and not on her bumper stickers, or not on her bumper. Our parents were also strong members of the NAACP. In the late 50s and early 60s, they kind of worked undercover as a couple for the NAACP. They would go to various motels and hotels in the Palo Alto area. I'm sorry. An African-American couple would walk into a hotel or motel and ask if there was a vacancy. If they were told there were no vacancies, then my parents would walk in a few minutes later and ask if there was a vacancy. If they were told yes, there was, to the white couple, my parents would notify the NAACP, and then the NAACP would threaten legal action against the hotel or motel. My mom led a pretty spiritual life, as Mary can attest to. She was a devout Unitarian, but she also worshiped Zen Buddhism, meditated and mentored meditation groups most of her adult life. We even had a meditation group in our basement in the late 60s, early 70s. Having dropped out of Smith College, she was really proud to receive her AA degree at the ripe age of 34 years old. And then she went on later to get a BA and an MA in psychology and counseling from the University of Cincinnati. As Mary was saying, she worked at numerous organizations, which I'm sure most of these people in this room are familiar with, but including the Council on Alcoholism, Bethesda Hospital, Claremont Recovery Center, and First Step Home. She was a dedicated volunteer at numerous organizations, including Prospect House, the Ohio Association on Alcoholism and Drug Addiction, the Cincinnati Nature Center, various Unitarian churches, and the Furnace Mountain Zen Center in Kentucky. She was a voracious reader and knitter. There were always piles of books in the living room, in her bedroom, all over. She also knit a lot. Every one of her children and grandchildren, upon their birth, received a knitted Christmas stocking that I promise you was about 3 feet long, stretched way out so you could fill it with lots of stocking presents. It's the greatest thing that I think we all remember about Christmas. Although she never talked about it, she came from a very well-to-do family in Cincinnati with a long history of deep roots in the Cincinnati area dating back to the 1800s. This is something she never talked about. I'm still amazed to learn about our family history, and I'm just shocked when I find out something that she never bothered to explain or point out that, oh, that was our parents, that was my ancestral home or whatever. I'm still learning things about our family here in Cincinnati. It just wasn't in her DNA, so to speak, to brag or even think about things like that. A few quick early memories. Early in my elementary school years, I was diagnosed with with dyslexia. Fairly severe dyslexia, and pretty much from the 3rd grade to about the 9th grade, each year she had to go in at the end of the school year and fight with the school to advance me to the next grade, because she knew that if I flunked, it would have been so socially I would be so socially distraught that I probably would have just dropped out of school. But so she was always there fighting for me. And one thing my mother really loved to do was sail. She didn't do it enough. She did a lot in Biddeford Pool, Maine, but when we moved to Palo Alto, we didn't have much of an ability to sail, so she went out and bought this little tiny sailboat. I mean, this thing was like the size of a bathtub, but it would only hold 2 people, but would fit in the back of her 60s-style station wagon. So she'd pick one of the kids, and we'd go out to this little tiny funky yacht club in Redwood City. It was in an industrial area. There were cargo ships parked all out in the water. You know, it wasn't the glorious sailing that you see around San Francisco. This is down further in the bay. It's kind of industrial sailing. But she was always just so at ease and happy when she was out there. And it was you know, at 10 years old, I'd never seen her so calm and just relaxed. My mom lived her life the way she wanted, and I'm so proud of the way she did it. Her spirit will live on to the many, many people she touched, including, I'm sure, everyone in this room. And all I can say is I'm just really proud of her. Her birthday would have been this Sunday. She would have been 93. But like Mary said, it was probably a good thing she wasn't around for the last election. But thank you very much.
Your daughter, Anne.
Hello. Try and get through this. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about my mother today. I wanted to reflect on my mother as a mother, and she was a great human being, and I'm fairly certain most daughters that give eulogies say the same thing. But over this last several weeks, I've really reflected on what an extraordinary person my mother was. And by any measure, she was remarkable. As a young child, I learned very quickly that my mom was different. In the words of one of her grandsons, she was built different. For one, she was taller than almost all the other mothers, which made her easy to find in a crowd. She was determined and serious at times, even a little distant. She wasn't the crawl in your lap kind of mother, but she was a mother that you sat back and admired. She was very smart, interested in the world around her. As mentioned, she always had a lot of books around her. In Palo Alto, we had a library, and it was filled with books from Colette, Henry James, Virginia Woolf. She was always reading and interested in finding out what you were reading. She wasn't interested in traditional mother-daughter activities. In 3rd grade, we were invited to a mother-daughter tea where you would wear white gloves and dress up, and she refused to go. And she didn't make soup-based casseroles with potato chips, which was a disappointment to me. She was actually a good cook. She'd cook cheese souffle and hollandaise, and she believed in simplicity. And growing up in Palo Alto, I thought we didn't have any money because she would make all our clothes and she'd cut our hair, and she was determined to do things for herself. And she always shunned kind of extravagance and pretense. She was engaged in life in her community, as many people talked about, volunteering at the Nature Center, the garden crew, tutoring. She sponsored many people, and she was happiest when giving to others. She acted on her values and was true to her beliefs, even when they were at odds with her immediate environment. As an adolescent, her children were challenging, at least I know I was, And but she remained very liberal. She had two rules that I remember. One, we had to be home at dinner for dinner at 6 o'clock, and which she cooked every night. And then two, I needed to wake her when I came in at night. And our friends, this attitude provided for our friends a safe haven, a place to go where there were few rules. In fact, most of the time she wasn't aware of who was in the house. She barely registered it. But if you needed someone to accept you just as you were and saw your differences and problems with authority as strong points, she was the adult for you. And she won the hearts of many of our friends. It was as an adult trying to find my own way in the world where my mother's style and model of behavior was most appreciated. She was actively involved, engaged, and self-directed. Her actions matched her values, and she was generous and giving and compassionate. Don't get me wrong, she did not suffer fools, and things like name dropping or snobbery she really had no tolerance for. But she was generous to those in need, and she loved her family, her children, and her friends. One of the true joys in my life was spending time with her when we traveled or talked on the phone. She was always interested in what I was doing. She participated in all my research projects. And it was a real privilege to be able to spend time with her at the end of her life. She was one step ahead of us in knowing that her end was near and that her body was failing. She prided herself on being on top of things and being in control, and found the process of dying much to her dissatisfaction. But what I witnessed was such a courageous and a lovely individual who delighted, even in her weakened state, at the sight of her many friends and family that came from all different walks of life to say hi to her and bye to her. Her book club members, church friends, gardening friends, family, recovery community. She had such a rich tapestry of life, and you were all part of it. And I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for being here.
The former director for 1,000 years of Prospect House, David Logan.
Geez, what a crowd. What a high intensity, high quality gathering of people. I don't know that I've ever been in such refined company. Thank you all for being here. My name is David Logan. I am a recovering alcoholic. And I've got myself timed out at 5 minutes here. We'll see what happens. I met Fran in 1981, half a lifetime ago, when we both served on the Prospect House board. She was then a woman in full and useful recovery, and I was a 39-year-old man just about through my first year of recovery, so I was really more like a 39-year-old boy. By 1981, Fran had already worked some years at the Alcoholism Council, and she was then the family therapist at Bethesda Hospital. Later, she went on to do great work at the First Step Home with the women and their families, and also consulting work. Then I now know she worked with Jack Niehaus, teaching young docs how to take family histories at the UC Medical School. In about 1984, she took a chance and recruited me to work at Bethesda's new intensive outpatient program. and trained me to work with the families there. She knew stuff, but without insisting that you knew that she knew. She had real humility, which is what allows people to effectively teach, I think. You have to have a student mind as well as a teacher mind if you're going to do it right, and she did. She taught me and she mentored me and was still mentoring me when we had our last long lunch in June. And a shout out to my wonderful smart wife, Dale, for suggesting that very important lunch. And a shout out to Buzz, because he talked me into getting on the board at Prospect House back in 1981. When I met her 43 years ago, I knew there was something special and real about her. She seemed to be made of finer material than most people are made of. Never did I get the impression that she thought that, but that is the impression she made upon me. She had a terrific sense of humor, which I think is a kind of a shorthand for wisdom, because it lets you know very quickly and very cleanly what is to be taken seriously and what's not. Humility and humor are, for me, the real signs of spirituality. And watching her in action, running a family group, was a thrilling privilege. She improvised like an inspired jazz musician, working with the band, the setting, the vibe, inside and outside the room. She could surprise you, and often did, and quietly. She was a Buddhist, and her long practice of meditation showed up in her demeanor, her understated and unself-conscious elegance, her professional practice, and her fresh take on all the world's manifestations, and she improvised all that too. She was in recovery herself for 61 years, and as many of you know, that particular journey begins with a step called Step 1, oddly enough. It poses a pretty damn big challenge. Are you ready and willing to admit that you're powerless over alcohol, that your life has become unmanageable? In other words, are you willing to admit that you're not who you think you are? That you don't really know who or what you are? This is such a hard question that some people seem not to be able to even consider it, let alone answer it. It involves telling the truth about yourself to yourself. Fran could do that and did do that, and that led her into a lifetime of effectively helping other people answer these tough questions, hundreds, maybe thousands, and mentoring dozens of other professionals, and personally sponsoring many, many individual women in AA over the many years. She got active in AA from the beginning, and she stayed active. As hard a challenge as that first step is, it is almost like a rehearsal for another harder challenge. If you're willing to forego intoxication, then you're committing, one hopes, to living as fully conscious a life as you can stand. And Fran took that challenge too. The cost of accepting the deal, and by the deal, I mean the deal the universe proposes. You can have the gift of conscious life, but there's some small print. You also have to agree to be conscious of your own mortality. We're born to die. Most of us contrive not to notice that and find denial a useful strategy. I do. But Fran took it on, signed the contract. Acceptance of this reality is about as hard as it gets. And I think she did manage it. The recovery helped, the Buddhism helped, being a member of this church helped, the meditation helped, the helping of others helped. But it is still very, very hard. The unknowingness of it all. And that's one more thing I want to learn from Fran. No matter how hard it is, it's still part of the deal. Hard? Yes. Impossible? No. The parable of the 8th century Venerable Bede of the identical twins arguing inside the womb about the nature of life on this beautiful green earth is as close as we can get. And to me, that just says the whole thing. What do you think it's like out there? Well, how do they know? How would they ever manage to have any idea? But the argument goes on, and that is as close as we can get, and that is by blessed indirection. Thank you.
For those of you who grabbed a hymnal, we'd like to sing hymn number 123, Spirit of Life. And for those that are willing and able to stand as we sing her favorite hymn. If you take a seat, I would like to, we're going to do our closing. And before the closing, we're doing a three-part closing. One is the Hopi prayer, another a Buddhist blessing by her monk from Furnace Mountain, and then my closing words. Thank you, Barbara, for Hopi prayer.
This was exactly who she was. I'll just say that. This smile that never wavered is who she was. And it was taken at a wonderful wedding. Okay, so the Hopi prayer is, do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there, I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sunlight on the ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn's rain. When you awaken in the morning hush, I am the swift, uplifting rush of quiet birds in circle of flight. I am the soft stars that shine in the night. Do not stand at my grave and cry, I am not there, I did not die.
Hello, friends. My teaching name is Myo Wall. I'm the resident teacher at the Cincinnati Zen Center, founded by Fran. She called me Mark. As we leave this gathering today, we leave as the communities that were and are Fran Turner. The Buddhist term for that is Sangha. Community of excellent friends. Friends who meet in the light and truth. So we leave this place as the body of the light of Fran, the light of Dharma, which is truth, original goodness, the light of sobriety. Two journeys that she supported for me, my teacher and mentor. And the light of healing. Not the light that Fran was, but the light that Fran is. That she is. She is. This reincarnation thing is real, you're seeing it. We go forward from this place as the life of Fran Turner unfolding for generations to come. There's this new life in the Cincinnati Zen Center that's amazing, of 20 and 30 somethings coming together to practice this ancient Dharma. And they only know of the legend of Fran Turner, who we called Saint Fran behind her back. Saint Francis. I think she knew we were suffering. I vow, we vow, my dear friend and original teacher, Fran, first retreat, Zen retreat, was in her basement in Marymount. Got some looks from the neighbors. We vow to carry forward your light and your life for generations to come, spreading in ever-growing circles throughout humankind for all time. And I'll close with a stanza of a chant that she taught me. This is what we chant with the passing of a bodhisattva. Jijang Bosal, 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 Jijang Bosal.
I don't want this to end. I'll have closing words. Noriko will play. Fran loved Beethoven and Bach and Mendelssohn and Dvorak. We'll play a closing piece in honor of Fran. But what I wanted to end with was Barbara Kingsolver on hope. The very least you can do in your life is to figure out what you hope for. And the most you can do is live inside that hope. Not admire it from a distance, but live right in it, under its roof. What I want is so simple I almost can't say it. Elementary kindness. Enough to eat, enough to go around, the possibility that kids one day might grow up to be neither the destroyer nor the destroyed. That's about it. Right now, I am living in that hope, running down its hallways and touching the walls on both sides. Barbara Kingsolver. And so, in closing, may each of you be bound in love strongly and fiercely to all of the memories of your beloved Fran that are stored within your hearts. May they never wear out, even when death grows distant. May you forever honor and cherish the goodness of her life. May your hearts be lifted up to begin to find laughter in the midst of your loss, to find hope in the midst of your sadness, to find comfort in the midst of your emptiness, to find meaning in the midst of your confusion. May you begin to find shelter as you weather the storms of your own heartache. And may there be a tender and a gentle comfort in your days to come. May the love and the peace and the sweet memories of this service console you, gently wipe tears from your eyes, and may you go forever in peace in memory of her, and may her memory again be a blessing. Go in peace. God bless. So join us for the reception. You'll be able to meet the family. There's a book to sign. Please sign your name. And there are cards. If you didn't bring one, you can fill out a card for them. So I'd like to have the family be able to leave first and make their way to the Ellen Hall, and then if we could follow.